Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Musa Jallo. In today's video, we're gonna be reacting to another video by PolyMatter, and the video is entitled "Why Oil Doesn't Corrupt Now." So, with no further delay, let's get into the reaction.
Oil has long been described as a curse. Nations that possess it should be among the richest in the world, yet so rarely do those riches reach the right hands. This graph, for example, shows a clear negative correlation between oil income on one axis and democracy on the other. This is confirmed by a glance at the largest producers: Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, and so on. The list becomes even more striking when adjusted per capita. Small countries with large reserves, it would seem, are doomed. Except, that is, for just one strange place: Norway. See if you can identify it. On the left is a nation of 5.3 million people. Only 2.2% of its land is arable, making it extremely dependent on oil, 1.7 million barrels of which it produces every day. The one on the right is home to 4.2 million people. Its land is 0.6% arable and produces 2.6 million barrels daily. Which is the authoritarian serial human rights abuser, Kuwait, and which is ranked the most democratic country on earth, Norway? Now, you
I
might
feel like
argue
this thing with the Norwegian oil situation, I feel like it's not so much about like the wealth of the oil that make Norway to be really successful. I feel like it's like the policy and stuff like that they have in place that really like kill it now. Because like Norwegian, their policy when it comes to oil is like really so strong. Which I feel like is a good thing and that a lot of countries can learn from, especially in Africa.
liberal democracies like Norway are protected at the outset from the worst outcomes of oil. Their representative governments ensure they will never become as corrupt, lawless, or authoritarian as others. Norway is not, after all, the only large oil producer to preserve democracy and minimize corruption. Canada and the US also fit into this category. But it is perhaps the only one to neither abuse nor squander its windfall. Alberta, for instance, has a similar-sized population, and both invested their petroleum earnings in sovereign wealth funds. But that's where the similarities end. Alberta's fund is now worth $18 billion, a number that may sound impressive but only works out to about $4,000 per resident. Norway's fund, on the other hand, is worth a massive $1.3 trillion. Divided by 5 million, that's 245,000 US dollars per person.
That is
Assuming
crazy, like imagine like that much money for like every citizens of Norway. Hey, that's crazy though. That's a lot of money actually.
$3,000 monthly cost of living in Oslo, every last Norwegian could therefore quit their job and live carefree for nearly 7 years if it were all distributed. How did Norway conquer big oil in a way neither Canada, nor America, nor any other country in the world could? Sponsored by Brilliant. Learn math, science, and computer science the intuitive way with the link in the description. Unlike many countries, Norway was in no hurry to extract its oil, in part because it didn't believe there was any. Its surveyors wrote in a memo, the chances of finding coal, oil, or sulfur on the continental shelf off the Norwegian coast can be discounted. And it was this patience, or rather disinterest, that would later give it an upper hand in negotiations. In 1959, the Dutch made a surprise discovery, what turned out to be the single largest natural gas field in all of Europe. Although most was found onshore, the field stretched all the way off the coast and into the North Sea. What if, everyone began to wonder, there was more? This possibility was especially intriguing to the British, who were left in poor financial shape after the war. Those long blue miles of nothing suddenly had everyone's attention. There was just one problem. Who owned what?
Oh my god, so imagine like if Norway was gonna be like most African countries, they was gonna allow like these other big countries to like bully them and like take all their economic zone. And but now they wasn't gonna have all this oil, so like it's really crazy.
no one could agree on where one country's sovereign waters ended and another's began. And in most versions of history, this is where Norway's love story with oil would have ended. The country is surrounded by a deep, clearly demarcated trench, which the UK could have argued was the most sensible place to divide the sea, leaving Norway with only a tiny slice of the pie, and one too deep to be of much use. But, as it happened, the UK was in no mood for a long, protracted border dispute and just wanted to get drilling. So instead, they just divided the water in half. Even better, for Norway, the median line calculation included some of its 240,000 distant islands, like this one, 10 miles off the mainland. Tiny details like these would eventually generate billions of extra dollars when an oil field was discovered on the border, 85% of which is owned by Norway. With the boundaries now agreed upon, it became open season. Phillips kicked things off by drilling 32 wells, all of which came up short. It seemed as though the skeptics may have been right all along.
I feel like there was Norway in their oil stories like the story of like never giving up, because imagine was gonna give up like after the first 10 digging, but like they dug the first 10 wells, nothing. The next 20, nothing. 30, nothing. 32, oh my god, that's a lot, and this thing is a lot of investment also, to like dig those wells.
Was simply no oil to be found, and it asked the government for permission to give up. But while many countries stipulate an amount of money to be spent in exchange for drilling rights, Norway was smarter, mandating a minimum total depth. So, having not fulfilled its contract, Phillips gave it one last shot, and sure enough, this final 33rd well struck gold. Then came the real test. With the smell of money fresh in the air, in came the American giants, who had a reputation for contributing very little to the economies they drilled in. They would drop in, take the loot,
Like really
and vanish.
So sad, like imagine a country like Nigeria today, if they was gonna like adopt the same Norwegian model that worked for Norway today. I know like you cannot compare like Norway and Nigeria like apples to apples because like two different places, But even something similar like this, it would have been like so good for them, Damn.
Leaving hardly a trace. Some even forbid their workers from wearing non-American made boots. Norway was David to the oil company's Goliath. But it wasn't flying blind. Two major lessons shaped its approach. First, they had seen in the Netherlands how damaging oil could be to the rest of the economy. It even has a name, Dutch disease, for when the local currency appreciates, lowering the country's competitiveness, ultimately doing more harm than good. Second, its government had learned firsthand how to deal with big corporations decades earlier, when it developed the nation's vast hydroelectric grid. All of this foresight paid off handsomely. While the Americans bullied the UK into giving its companies equal treatment under the law, in Norway, the government was firmly in charge. Oil, in its mind, was not just another product to tax, but belonged to the public, who could rent it to private companies in exchange for their help in extracting it.
Imagine every African country could think like this, like South Africa, Uganda, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Libya, South Africa. Like all these African countries have like a whole lot of natural resources, If only they could take the approach, like, you know what? This resource is what is of the people. You are only here to like rent it from them, If you're gonna rent it, you have to pay like certain amount of tax to the people, But it doesn't have to be like your normal corporate tax. It have to be like something like really so crazy high. The thing about natural resources, when you have it, it's there. You're not paying rent for it. You're not paying like to feed it. It's just gonna sit there by itself. So I don't get why people like so anxious to like sell out their resources. It's like really so sad actually.
Well, starting point for taxation, therefore, was 100%, not zero. Today, oil is subject to the ordinary 22% corporate tax rate and a special tax of 56%.
So imagine like the Norwegian government is taking like almost 80% tax on every barrel of oil that is like sold from Norway, on a profit, So like imagine how is it like Norway is not gonna be like one of the richest country in the world, But I don't know how African government, I don't know why they cannot see things like this and try to implement it, because this is like so simple, Okay, it's not. I don't know if it's simple or not, but it just makes sense, because like this company they'll be like, you know what, even though I'm paying like 80% tax, but you know what, I'd rather pay 80%. I'd rather gain that 20% profit because it's still gonna be a lot than like me gaining nothing, So in the beginning they'll be like, oh, we don't want to do it now, but guess what? If they really want your resources, they'll come back and pay that 80% tax.
A combined 78. And while the state keeps the vast majority of the profit, it does so only after a discovery is made. Private companies pay for their own exploration. Finally, the Norwegian government wisely saw oil as a means to an end, not an end itself. It never assumed, as others did, that petroleum would naturally bring jobs. It knew it had to create them, and to do that, it needed to ensure the oil flowed through Norway. This was no easy feat. To get the oil on land, it first needed to cross the deep Norwegian trench, navigate its winding fjords, and be accompanied by remote roads, pumps, and plants.
But you see, like,
But it was also
I don't know, like this country is like really amazing. Like with all the things this guy is saying in this video. So like the first like find the resources, they'll be like, you know what, we're gonna own a large part of the resources. Other company can come, but then we're gonna like even tax their profit. Yes, all that. But then there was like, you know what, you're not just gonna like take out like our natural resources and like send it. Like Nigeria, for example, I'm gonna use them a lot as an example in this video. They have the largest production of oil in Africa, if I'm not mistaken. But they still import oil to come to Nigeria because what? People just extract the oil, take it and refine it outside of Nigeria, and then like Nigerians have to buy those same oil that came from their country for a profit to those foreign companies, and then like before Nigerians go and buy it for a higher price. So imagine like if this company be like, you know what? If you want to take my oil, you have to build refinery to refine it from here. And you have to like build like logistic company to like ship it from here. Some people will say no, but trust me, some people will say yes. Because at the end of the day, it worked for Norway, so that means like it can work other places also.
also an opportunity. Just as labor-intensive manufacturing allowed Southeast Asia to quickly industrialize and shift to better, more profitable sectors, oil helped develop the wider Norwegian economy. State workers were instructed to learn from their foreign counterparts, to copy and eventually overtake them. Today, Norwegian labor may be among the world's most expensive, but it's also among the world's best. An estimated 200,000 people, or 1 in every 14 workers in the country, are employed as a result of the industry. And yet, it never got carried away. Knowing full well that this non-renewable resource would eventually run out, Norway self-imposed a limit of 90 million tons each year. Patience was paramount. Not everything went smoothly.
Like I really admire them for this. Like they're like really so smart. I feel like Scandinavians in general, they're like really so business savvy. Like very smart people.
There were hundreds of helicopter crashes, diving incidents, fires, and spills. In 1980, a drilling rig capsized, killing 123 people. It was a costly and tragic wake-up call to the industry's poor regulations. And when the money first began trickling in, it wasn't sure what exactly to do with it all. Between 1976 and 80, oil revenue increased by a factor of 15, which led only to inflation. When oil prices collapsed in 1986, Norway fell into a recession. Something had to change. The solution, of course, was to diversify. In 1990, it created the Government Pension Fund Global, today the single largest sovereign wealth fund. It owns 1.5% of all public companies on the planet.
1.5% of all public companies, man. That's crazy, man.
All government oil revenue is invested in the portfolio, which helps reduce the country's dependence on oil prices. But what, you might ask, prevents a populist party from recklessly spending it all? Wouldn't voters reward politicians for distributing it today rather than prudently saving it for tomorrow? To prevent this, it established a rule that spending can only be as high as the expected return, which today is set at 3%. Norway's path to the present was far from perfect.
Like with all that, also, I don't know if it's going to mention in this video, like the Norwegian oil fund, they invest in like They don't invest in companies that they believe like it's not good for the environment. Like people will like do things deliberately to like harm the environment. They don't invest in like alcohol and nothing like cigarette and stuff like that is not good for people's health. And most of all, they don't invest in oil. They don't invest in oil. They don't invest in any oil company. If a company have anything to do with oil, they will not invest in it. Because like their whole thing is like, what, this money is oil money. We're trying to like hedge against like the price of oil falling, so it wouldn't make sense for us to invest in oil, which I feel like is very very smart. And also they don't invest that money in Norway. Like all the oil fund money, none of it is invested in Norway. Everything is outside of Norway. And these people, I really like this about them.
Luck was also involved. But it can say what few other nations can, that it converted a short-term finite resource into lasting generational and widely felt prosperity. Critics argue oil has nevertheless distorted the economy, as felt in the country's high housing prices, or its disinterest in developing offshore wind farms, like its neighbor, Denmark. Valid as these arguments may be, they also reflect Norway's tremendous successes. Other nations look at its problems
But I feel like Norway doesn't need like offshore wind farm like Denmark, because like I think almost 80 to 90% of Norway energy needs is met by like hydroelectricity. So like there is no point of them for them making like offshore wind, because like most of the electricity is already renewable, like, so I don't see why they have to go and make like offshore wind farm, but I might be wrong, but I don't see it.
more with envy than pity. One question, however, casts a dark shadow over the country's achievements. Norway has no doubt been good to itself, but has it been good to the world? After the state oil company removed the word oil from its name in 2018, one wonders whether Norway's lack of ostentation, the skyscrapers of Saudi Arabia, or Dubai's ski slopes in the desert, isn't mere modesty, but actually embarrassment. Unique among its oil peers, Norway aspires, at least, to good stewardship. Last year, 75% of new non-commercial car sales were electric, far more than any other country. And nearly all of its electricity is derived from renewable energy, mostly hydropower. Most ironically, its oil fund refuses to invest in fossil fuel
It's crazy,
companies.
but it's true.
Though, make no mistake, this financial strategy helps hedge against the price
Exactly
of oil.
my point. Like you might think like, oh, you might think like it's like for like I don't know, sentimental reason why they don't want to invest in oil, but it is actually to hedge against the price of oil falling. Because when the oil price is falling, that means like the profit or the money going to the oil fund is going to drop. But if this money is dropping and then they have like hedge against the oil, like investing in technology, investing in like electrical industries or investing in other industries, that even though like the oil price is going down, but still they can still keep growing the oil fund. That is really so smart, man. Like actually my dream now, if I'm gonna work in Norway, I want to like work for those like the company like the Bank of Norway, the one that manage the oil fund. It's really smart people.
The central bank says so itself. All of these green initiatives may give the casual observer the impression that Norway is gradually transitioning to a post-oil economy. The truth, however, is very different. Far from slowly diminishing, production is actually expected to increase, and that's according to the government. The country's newly elected coalition leader has firmly rejected a complete cutoff of oil, and like many voters, prefers a more moderate approach. Oil's share of GDP, exports,
Honestly, I feel like I feel like it is actually stupid for you to think like you should like cut off the oil. Because it's Norway doesn't produce oil. You still have Saudi Arabia. You still have China. You still have the US that do fracking. Which is even more bad for the environment. And you still have like country like Nigeria. If you look at the in River State, like the Delta, like there's like so many oil spill all the time. But at least now we're trying to like lead those other countries by example to show you like, okay, we know like we're not naive to think like, oh, the whole world is gonna transfer to like renewable energy tomorrow. So like at least they have the resources. They are happen to like do it in the most sustainable way to like extract the oil. I think it's better. Like I think it's better for now.
and state revenues over time confirm that the commodity remains a critical part of the economy, and will continue to be for many years to come. In 2006 and 10, it reached new agreements with the UN and Russia to expand its maritime zone, which is now 6.6 million square kilometers, 17 times its land area and over
Man, that's crazy, Like Canada have 10 million, United States have 9.5, Australia have 7.7, and Norway have 6.6. That's a wow.
twice the size of India. And as Norway's own oil melts the ice in the Arctic, making exploration there easier, it will only be further encouraged to extract even more oil from it. If Norway, one of the richest places on Earth, the poster boy of environmentalism, with a first-hand view of the beauty of nature, and financially secure for decades to come, feels no sense of urgency, it's unlikely to be found anywhere else.
Man, but like this video, I know this like it's like a really hot topic, like even like people debate over a lot, Some people feel like they should like cut the oil, some people feel like they shouldn't cut the oil. And then I even saw like a show on a Norwegian TV, I don't know, I don't remember, it was a long time ago, They have those people living in this fishing village. Some of the fishermen was like, you know what? There is a lot of oil, we'd rather like be employed in the oil industry and make higher income. And some people was like, oh, you know what, I want to like continue fishing, so there shouldn't be oil extraction here, It's got, I don't know, there is no right or wrong way, but my point is like, if now we stop producing oil, there will still be other countries that are producing oil. There will still be other countries that is like gonna do like those unethical environmental things, because like the thing about like global warming, like what's happening in Nigeria, it might still affect people living in Norway, what's happening in Norway might affect people living in China, So like, why should other country problem be affecting Norway? And why should a country problem be affecting Norway? And now we have like the way to like make more resources, for themselves. But then like they are not making use of that money, they just have money and sitting on it, So I feel like for me, like if the whole world go to like green energy, or like 75% of the world, then like no, we should cut that way, But for now, I feel like for me, it's no big deal, But thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have another video that you want me to react to from Norway, or about the oil industry in Norway, or just about Norway in general, you can leave them down in the comment section below. I'm gonna check it out. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.